hot. Florida's hot. Why do you think I got all these ACs?
Milk was a bad choice.
I actually configured my house to use DC power.
Really?
No.
I was about to say, I'm not surprised at all.
Your what? Let's have DC converters in them.
Deconditioning.
Yeah. Just don't worry. It's fine.
Just imagine how
Very efficient.
logistically much of a pain in the butt that would be.
Oh, it just like the thick wires to my air conditioner would be like this thick.
But you could plug your computer. You wouldn't even need a power supply. Actually, no, you'd still.
Yeah, but it's you know how hard it is to find a computer with no power supply. It's extremely hard to find. I've been looking for years.
Yeah, with no power supply. Yeah, I mean it'd be very efficient, if to say the least.
Have to convert it back to AC to go back into DC just for your
Oh my
computer.
god! Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything even happened recently?
Stuff. And things.
You're the host. You have to know the future.
That's
That's how it works. We actually this is a Minority Report podcast where we talk about breaches that are about to happen. Did you not know that?
You didn't get the
No.
ball rolling down with like the special wood that like,
Breaches
tells
of it.
us the grain.
There's some AI news, which sounds like it would be interesting to talk about.
There's always some AI news. It feels
There's
like.
always
Yeah, really easy to talk about.
Could also be one of those days to where like just this big news story breaks like 15 minutes after we're off the air. So that's definitely
That does happen sometimes.
That does happen a lot. Yeah, where they're like, oh, we just did a newscast and here's this huge news story that breaks.
I was like,
either
what do you
during
guys
our
think
newscast or
about this?
after? Yeah.
I think the timing was horrible. That's what I think about it.
I only opened the headline ones, like the top one. I didn't go down at all. Now I'm.
That's fine.
Actually,
That's
looking
actually the way to do it. We should only
Isn't it, right?
expand if people have good special articles or if we run out of
Or
time.
if John's here, John just goes like all over. the
No,
place.
John's just like, guys, I found this article, and everyone's like, what? Where is it?
Where did you
Yes.
John, please tell me, where did you find this article? It's like, I've been thinking about it all week. I'm like, it came out yesterday. I don't understand.
I seen it on the television.
Yes. I don't know. He finds one. He's like, we gotta talk about this one.
I think I'm going to reverse engineer John's tactics. I think he just goes to dark reading and finds something spicy and then just brings it. And he's like, here you go.
Oh, I found one article that definitely is the you gotta talk about this one. I'm not gonna spoil it though.
Well, I think you should spoil it when we do the show.
Yeah, I'll spoil it when we do the show.
I feel like I should have drank caffeine before this.
You feel like you should have drank caffeine before the
I'm
show?
definitely on like a low level right now. I didn't have coffee yet today, and it's like
You had no coffee today?
Yeah, it's been a rough day for me as well. So
Oh my
it's
God.
like I think I had a piece of cheesecake while in a meeting for lunch.
What is your diet? Just cookies and
What
no
is going
coffee,
on?
but
Why don't you
cheese.
caffeinate your cheesecake?
What was ever in the fridge that was already made. I just grabbed it.
are
and came
you
Are
out
we
there.
going to have an intervention for you, Wade?
Yes,
Maybe,
dude.
I don't know. Like, so I have like a pour over coffee, right? And
Ooh,
like
look
it makes
at this
good
fancy
coffee.
man.
Well, no, I do it myself. Like I grind it myself.
we
put it
got-
in the
we
Yeah,
gotta
but you
understand
didn't
how
have
the concept-
15 minutes
I'm sorry,
to make
wait.
coffee
If
this
you think
morning?
I
It takes-
grind it myself as a defense for you're fancy man, like I don't know what. That's not what you think it is.
The grinder is like $8 on Amazon Prime. All right, it's not like it's an expensive.
Oh,
only if he's
coffee
roasting his
grinder.
own coffee.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah.
I think what he meant to say,
Before I
what he
put
meant
it
to
in
say
this
was,
French press.
I think what he meant to say was, I hand grind it.
Yes,
That's
that is
actually
better.
not that fancy.
Hand
Not that
grinding
fancy,
coffee,
guys.
right? It probably takes me a good 15 to 20 minutes to make coffee.
Yeah, and you
And
just didn't
it-
have
it-
time.
Just
Worst
didn't have
barista
time.
ever.
It limits me to like if I want to make another pot, I'm like, do I really want to invest 20 minutes to go downstairs and to make another pot of like another cup? I make it per cup, not even per pot.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
No,
Wait,
I
Wade
feel
is the
that.
reason that Keurig's sell well.
I will say you gotta have good options. You can't just be committed to the pour over. Sometimes it's nice on a Saturday morning, but on a like rushed Monday, you can't be
Yeah.
relying on that.
Mm-mm.
Get an espresso machine. They're only like $15,000.
Oh, okay.
I've got 2 of them just in case one breaks. You never know.
No, yeah, espresso is the way to go. You can get pretty solid coffee in like a minute. That's what I would
I'll see.
recommend.
I'll see if John will approve.
Japanese
that as-
hot pot and instant
Yeah.
coffee.
Office
Japanese hot
expense,
pot.
$15,000.
Instant coffee. I mean, that's actually okay. That's not a terrible idea if you need to drink a ridiculous amount of coffee. You can. That's basically infinite coffee glitch at your desk.
They
Yes.
have,
And
they
Like-
have like instant coffee packs like buried at the bottom of this bag. Now that I think about it, from
Well,
like,
go
the
get that
Philippines.
bag, and we'll see you in 5 minutes. Cold brew is good too. People in chat, we got lots of good.
yeah, that's like
Cold
mine,
brew is
bro.
good. I
There
will
you
say,
go.
cold brew, you're not going to get a lot of the off flavors you get with normal coffee
Yeah,
because
but-
it's yeah.
You're gonna be off.
I
the
like,
walls,
uh,
though.
Loose and
No, you
Shadow's
just
got a
did-
great
just
comment
dilute
in the
it down.
chat. 2 espresso machines, BCDR plan from
Yes.
Loose and Shadow. Real nice.
Yes.
Exactly.
Straight
Wow,
into
these,
the DC outlet.
these John Strand memes are really doing it for me. The one of him on the is that John Strand? I don't even know.
The
Someone on
barista
the
John
Just
Strand.
going-
Yeah,
Oh,
Barista
that- I
John
think
Strand
that
is funny.
Discord over here.
I don't know if that is,
Totally missing
but
it.
if you look at Haircut Fish, I don't know if it's John Strand, but someone on the orb.
That's good.
Aeropress
Looks
is
like
good
John.
too, but Aeropress can get really complicated. And I will say, I think
There's
unless
John.
you have a really fancy, complex recipe for Aeropress, it's not as good as like pour overs.
I got rid of my Keurig when I read about like the dude who invented Keurig is like, what have I done?
This was a
Like-
mistake.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Keurig,
I'm like,
Keurig and Nespresso are the bottom tier of coffee. I would say
Yes.
instant coffee is above that. Instant coffee is better
There's
than
some
Nespresso.
good instant brands these days.
I
too.
agree. Yes, I agree. I think instant is not to be slept on.
On this episode of Talking About Coffee.
Talking about coffee, a coffee podcast where we talk about breaches.
oh, the other. So when I was at DEF CON, one of my students found me, and he was from, I think he was from like
Trappy.
Central America. He was from Central America, maybe even Colombia. But he gave me coffee from his country, and I was like, "This is amazing!" And it's actually like that's what I'm still drinking.
And you're still drinking the same coffee that he gave you?
It was a bag. I make 1 cup at a time. You only go through like a pound bag so quick, right? Like,
Yeah, you gotta. It's impossible to preserve. One time, if you have friends, you just gotta like give coffee to your friends and be like, drink this before it goes bad.
Oh, I see.
All right,
And then here
let's
I
hit
am.
it.
Should we get this
Yeah,
started?
Hit it.
Let's
Yeah.
We
let's
can
hit
talk
it.
about coffee for like an hour. Go
Yeah.
for it.
That's a fact. Welcome to Black Hills Information Security, talking about news. I am your host today, Ralph May, and I am excited to be here with an all-star cast of luxurious host and
Coffees?
cast members. Yes, we have.
Luxurious beans.
Yes, starting from my left, your right. I'm not sure. A bird who pooped on me yesterday.
No.
Good job.
I'm not the
Derek.
bird. I was pooped on.
Does that make you super lucky?
No, I don't know.
He's-
We'll find out. I
Yes,
guess.
Yes.
we were
Wade,
discussing omens. What's up?
thanks for joining us, making your way here all the way today. We got Alex. Thank you also for joining us. Paul, I don't think I've seen you on here before. Welcome, Paul.
No.
David and Sean, and then finally, last but not least, the man who makes us sound great.
I push buttons.
Yes.
That's my job.
So, did anyone read the news? Did anyone even look at it? Did anything
I saw
even useful
Fortinet got
happening in the
breached.
security?
Fortinet
I
got
saw
breached.
the $2
That's
billion
a big one.
purchase.
The WHOIS one.
Yeah, the Mastercard article is interesting.
Yeah,
The
Mastercard.
WHOIS one is good. I mean, M&A.
But
is
where do
always
you want to
interesting.
start? You want to start with the Fortinet breach?
I say start with that. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah,
do
let's
it.
do that one because I
It's a-
clicked on it and I have it copied
That,
already.
because you have it in your browser right now.
yeah,
oh, wait,
let's do that.
which link did you click on? Okay.
I mean,
Ooh.
okay, so
The one Wade
everyone,
gave me.
yeah, I was
Everyone
about
knows
to say.
Fortinet. I think
They get
440 gigs.
lot of
I
exploits.
think all of those 440 gigs are confirmed to be not firewall configs.
That would actually be a lot of firewall configs.
That would be every
especially
firewall
with
config in the world. Yeah. So I guess it hasn't really been attributed, has it?
Wait, is that,
Not at least that
does
it
that
sounds
say
40
40
article.
bitch?
I'm looking at the
The threat
paywall,
actor is
but-
known as
oh,
40
here we
bitch.
are.
Oh, that's a pretty
40
good name.
It's on his-
I thought that said 40 breach and like your mouse was over it, but nah, 40.
Okay,
breach.
let me rephrase. It hasn't been attributed to something that isn't just a meme. It's not like locked in. It's attributed to Porta bitch.
A threat actor that just goes after one company. Like, good for them.
Purpose
right?
built.
So
Yeah,
you said they got 400 gigs of what? Do we know
440
what?
gigs. Yeah, but apparently Fortinet claims it only affects 0.3% of its
0.3%
customer
of its
base.
customers, yeah.
Which is a fun number because it's like, what if those are your paying customers and everyone else is just free accounts?
I don't know what Fortinet free tier you're using. I mean,
I'm just gonna do my default thing that I do on the show, where I say every breach is from info stealers and say it was from info stealers. Probably like a vendor thing, like a vendor had access to a bucket or something like that.
It gets me because you're like 90% right with that. It's just the.
Yeah, like you can be 90% right just by accident because of how often it happens.
It was third-party cloud-based shared file drive. That's how they phrase it, which to me means could be S3 bucket, could be Azure Storage Blob, could be Snowflake or whatever.
MFA definitely
Google Drive.
I mean, the allegation of a SharePoint server from the threat actor could still be a cloud-based storage. In that sense.
Yes, true. Well, that's what they're
I'm
saying.
Also just
they
scratching my
access.
head, like, at what is this data, right? 440 gigs for 0.3% of their customer base, and like you said, it's not firewall config. So is this just like giant reams of log files or something?
It could be like diagnostics. My guess is
ISOs.
My guess is it's docs. I'm guessing it's like diagnostic data. So this is one thing we've encountered with network vendors before, where like they have less than secure practices for their support team, and the support team's like, oh, your firewall isn't working, well just upload the files to this Google Drive or whatever. The full diagnostic archive, which could be hundreds of gigs of like 7 days worth of logs and all the diagnostic dumps. That's my theory. I completely made that up for the record. I don't have any data to back that up.
I was about to say, you have the data already, don't you? We know it.
The data is public. I haven't downloaded it myself because I'm too lazy. But it is like the threat actor Forta bitch or whatever posted.
Classy name.
They did post like key access. They posted the files, so they're just going for broke. The files are already open, so
there must not be anything good there. Do you think if they just posted it right away?
I would guess they tried to ransom it, failed, and so they posted it.
The one article says they the threat actor claimed that they attempted a ransom, and Fortinet basically told them to screw off.
Sure. Yeah.
Good for them.
So
which link did
Fortinet's response, if you read the comments, they're acting like this is no big deal. So
typical Tuesday, huh?
So next week on the news, we'll talk about why it was a big deal. Stay tuned.
Yes, stay tuned. It's always funny because sometimes these breaches come out and we get just a whiff that there could be something, right? They're like, well, it was an incident, right? It's nothing. And then a week goes by, as Corey mentioned, and then we're like, yeah, it was something. It was something big, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, yeah, we'll see. It could be even like sales data or something like bunch of slide decks with like all the
sales
template.
PDF.
Yeah, 440 gigs. Yeah, probably it's got to be some kind of logs or diagnostic data. That's a lot of data.
Only photos of the routers.
NetFlow of a single.
It could be NetFlow. Like that's a good like potential thing that would make sense.
Yeah, some of the info coming out is that it exposed the SSO credentials, support files. If you have FortiCare or FortiCloud accounts, those are at risk. This was stuff from a breach that occurred last November.
So it could, I mean, people are saying in chat, it's totally true. It could be Snowflake fallout potentially, depending on where that data was stored.
Snowflake.
But
melted flake.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, and there's also, again, going back to sometimes the threat actors have brought this up, but there's the threat actor was accusing Fortinet of failing to file an SEC 8K form. So they didn't do that mandatory disclosure. So that might be some of the, some of the reasons why it was just released for free. It's like, look, this is all the stuff that was breached, and you never did that filing that was necessary. You didn't negotiate with us.
When they do that filing, do they naturally say like, "Hey, these people just filed pretty quickly"? Does anybody know? Like, how do they know they didn't do the filing, and they just kept it secret? Insider threat. No?
You're saying that how does the company know that they are the ones who filed?
Alex said that the threat actor said that Fortinet didn't file, that they were breached because they're publicly traded.
Okay.
Right? How do they know? Like, when a publicly traded company does file, how long does it take for the public to find out?
That I don't know, but I think it. I think it's.
right?
I don't think it takes that long. Actually, I think they're publicly available pretty rapidly. That's actually how you hear about a lot of these is the records being available for poll. So presumably, of course, the threat actor knows when they hit them, and they know within X days they haven't seen anything posted, and then they know, okay, you guys haven't posted anything.
Yeah, and considering this was from November of last year, like they could safely say that you haven't filed this because we breached you in November, and here it is in September, and we're dropping this information now. And
I feel like it's part of the ransom negotiations to be like, hey, not only will we, disclose the data, we'll also go public with, the announcement or whatever. That it's got to be like a bargaining chip from the attacker's perspective of like, not only will I do this, I'll also cause impact to your share price or whatever.
Typical.
Sweet. Speaking of Snowflake,
how much of a I was just trying to think, is there any actual useful lesson to take out of this one for the audience? But it seems like it's kind of a nothing burger to me. I don't know if you guys have a different perspective.
I mean, I would say if you use Fortinet products, definitely make sure that you
find another firewall
monitor your exposure, especially if you use the two products that Alex listed, which would be FortiCloud and was it FortiSupport or something?
Yeah,
everything's got to be FortiCare. FortiCare. If you've ever wanted your firewall to be able to tell you what your cough is, that's what that is. Yeah. So basically, if you're affected by this, I'm sure you'll be getting an email here shortly. But I mean,
free credit monitoring for life, the usual.
These are the kinds of things like Fortinet stuff should probably never be publicly exposed in any way, shape, or form. So if you're already hardened, you probably don't really have to think or worry about this. But I will say third-party cloud credentials. Think about your what access to your Fortinet support interface could do if it was malicious, right? I don't know. Probably nothing, but maybe if you could modify a config or something, like, who knows?
That's a good one to call out.
Speaking of Snowflake, did you see they finally enabled multi-factor? And why the hell?
No, you mean required.
Required, yes. I'm sorry.
It's been an option for
required. It's been an option. I'm just kind of taken back the idea that like it's not forced from the get-go. I don't know. I guess a lot of platforms aren't forced. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think we should do you think when you go to a website, everyone should be enforcing multi-factor like by default?
No.
I think it depends on the company, right? Yeah.
Okay.
I think it should be optional. I think it should be prompted on enrollment, and I think it should be required once you actually put data that's beyond test data. Like, basically, like if let's say you sign up for a Snowflake account, it should ask you, do you want MFA during account setup? If you say no, that's okay. But the second you go and import a CSV into Snowflake, it's like now MFA is required, if that makes sense. Like once you put data into it, then it trips the threshold for, okay, now you need MFA. Because if you're just like demoing it for the first time, although honestly it takes 2 seconds, so it's not that hard to set up. But.
So what I've seen with a lot of the different providers out there is typically they run into, on the setup process, they'll do some kind of, multi-factor, but not in the sense that we're thinking of, right? So the SMS, right? If you got to set up a phone, or email is the most common one, right?
Or whatever.
Yeah. And so, and then what they do is they immediately turn on some kind of conditional access within their application. So that if you log on from a new device, whether they fingerprint your browser or whatever, then it kind of forces you into validating your authentication via that email, right? It'll say, hey, we haven't noticed you from this device. We sent an email to send us that code. So I think that's like the easier on-ramp, right? That I've seen.
You're saying passwordless.
Yes.
It's still single factor, but the factor is something you are, not something you know.
Well, technically they're adding in a kind of an extra validation, right? Is that like 1.5 factor? Because it technically it's out of band though, so it's an email, right?
It's still single factor though. The only authentication token is just the email link you get. That's the only authentication. You could send that link to anyone you want, just like you could share your password.
You could send the link. Yeah, you could send the link to anyone you want. It's only going to you though.
I mean, you're right. That is like the newer way of doing things. Is you don't require a password at all on account creation. You just require an identity. And then that.
Well, yeah, I've
gets
also seen
verified.
that too, where they're just like, hey, just an email or whatever. But anyways, the on ramp where like that's their way of moving in, and then they have the option if you want to enable a second factor, whether it be SMS, horrible idea, or KeyPass, which is probably the best, and then
I mean, I think it should be required. Like, I think that is the great option. But the two things that people are talking about in the chat that I want to call out are, number one, the friction, which is there's two kinds of friction, which is if I have to set up MFA and I don't have a password manager, then that hurts me and I might just browse to another site or do whatever. The other thing is friction on support. A lot of people don't know how to effectively manage MFA tokens. And so if you set up a TOTP and you lose the Google auth, you get a new phone or whatever happens and you don't know how to back up that, then that's creating a lot of support load on the company where you're like, hey, I lost my MFA. And then it's like, if that process is easy, then you just have the similar security of like making it too easy to reset MFA.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's ridiculous for a company like Snowflake, whose the entire point of it is to put your good data in there. It's like it's like the whole point of Snowflake is give us your crown jewel data and we'll make it easier to process and access. Well, why doesn't that require MFA? It's one thing to do like New York Times or whatever. What is if I'm going to read all my articles?
But, I mean, what's the risk, right? I mean, because like AWS, for example, rolled out mandatory two-factor 2 years ago. Like if you have an AWS account, if you had an account, you had to enable it. There wasn't a choice, right? La-di-da-di everybody, but that was like a couple of years ago now. So
I mean, but also you can still create access keys with infinite. Like they're like
you can still make an access key that is like a forever thing, right?
Yeah, you can still make an access key which is single factor, but I mean, it should be required. This is way. The other thing is there is a cost to MFA if it's SMS based. They have to pay for every one of those texts outgoing, and those bills can get really expensive.
Big enough,
But I mean, again, for a company this size,
Does the token base then, like Google Auth one, does that not cost anything then?
No.
TOTP, I mean, it depends. It shouldn't cost anything if it's in the code base of the app, but a lot of people are just going to use a third-party code base, like, Keycloak, which is open source or free, or some of them will just use Okta or other like well-known providers.
It depends. So if you write your own authentication mechanism, which isn't that crazy, you could implement like Google Authenticators.
TOTP is free and open.
It's free. It's open. It's like an open standard, right? But if you do implement one of the other authentication providers a lot, for example, like Auth0 and other stuff like that.
Okta,
they'll implement that.
Auth0, Duo.
They'll do those because then they don't have to write all the authentication mechanisms. They can just bring in those libraries and then use that inside of their web application. So it just depends.
So basically, it is free. I mean, most apps should have TOTP-based MFA. Like, there's plenty of home lab apps. That you can get that are like to support TOTP-based MFA without any kind of, But again, roll your own, blah blah blah. Like it does take some effort, friction, whatever you want to call it, to get it rolling. But
you guys want to
anyway
talk about my favorite technology, cameras?
Cameras. Wait, which story on that?
So, cameras and AI.
Another hot take. This is not the first take by Larry Ellison that we've talked about on the news. The last one was, I forget does anyone remember what it was? It was something like AI is going to take all of security's jobs or something. I think that's what it was.
So he's working on he's not really working. It doesn't sound like he's working on a surveillance system. He sounds like he's working
sitting on his
AI
private island, which is just Hawaii.
Yeah. that's an American private island right there.
He owns 98% of an island in Hawaii, but anyway.
No way. Mark
I'm serious.
owns more. He's got a big lot.
Anyway.
Anyhow. So he's coming up, or when I say coming up, or trying to develop a AI platform for all of the cameras, feed all of that, like, surveillance cameras and police cameras and all this other stuff in to see if people are doing bad things. I'm not sure.
Wow, he's 80 years old.
Yeah, right. He looks pretty good for 80, to tell you the truth. But I guess that's what $1 billion does to you too.
He's got that young blood. He's probably got a blood boy. He's probably got a Botox guy.
Blood boy.
Oh my gosh.
Wheel out the Mad Max. There we go.
I mean, he's spending a lot of money to get the obvious answer that, like, yes, people are doing crimes. Like, more cameras, more AI. You're going to go from okay, there's a crime that was committed. We have video footage of it. To a crime was committed. We have video footage of it, and that video footage is in 4K and from 3 different camera angles. And it's what changes there that you go look if having clear-cut crimes on body cameras, on surveillance videos, on ATM machines, having those, if that doesn't result in the crime getting prosecuted, how does having more cameras and more AI, all you're going to do is it's going to make it clear that there's a lot more crime that's not being addressed.
I mean, like, this is the definition of this is only newsworthy because a billionaire said it. Because, like,
that's right.
I mean, okay, here's the quote. He said, "Every police officer is going to be supervised at all times, and if there's a problem, AI will report the problem and report it to the appropriate person." Okay, can we talk about alert fatigue?
No.
If you're watching a feed, let's say you're watching a feed from every police officer, there's always going to be a problem. That's their job. The whole job is
literally
a problem.
I think he's getting actually.
Problems,
right? I think he's actually getting more at like if police are not doing their jobs properly. They talk about it more like
okay, back to square one. That's their entire. No, I'm just kidding.
So okay, so you're saying
what you're saying,
AI
but I
is
will
like
say
the
like
monitors. They're like the monitors.
Well, that's how I read it. I read it as AI is going to keep an eye on everyone on both sides of everything, and so it's not just AI is going to catch petty crimes. It's also AI is going to tell you when the cop is beating the tar out of that guy down the street that he shouldn't be beating up.
Double crime.
Correct.
I think this article is
we've
written
got
by
body
AI.
cams for that already
I think
in a lot of
it could be written by
jurisdictions,
AI.
which seem like a much less intrusive way of achieving.
He
that
probably
goal.
yes, it's confirmed now. We're making this up, but he definitely went on before this interview. He went on the AI and said, "Give me some hot takes I can give in front of a bunch of people." I mean, it could be true, but it is totally just like the concept is so easy to just like say, but the reality of implementing it is not as easy. And AI is not just like a yada 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 thing. You can't just be like, "Oh yeah, of course." AI is going to figure out when cops are doing something they shouldn't be doing. It's like, okay, explain how.
If baton is moving at X speed and
Yes.
outline is human, alert.
Yeah.
There you go. I wrote the first detection for
Oh my
for
god,
the AI.
killing it, dude.
I think
all
more
of these-
concerning to me than like to try and bring this back to a little bit of seriousness. I think more concerning than the idea of having AI try to assess what's going on in video was the implication that you need to build, the Orwellian super surveillance state, which I don't know about y'all, but I'm not too fond of the idea of a CCP level of monitoring everywhere on all the time that is
Well,
controlled.
that one's
a
they're
little more
asking for our
hardcore,
consent,
yeah,
really.
There's already plenty of stories about what that kind of monitoring is already being used for, let alone when you start slapping intelligent algorithm on top of it that make it faster and easier to track people down, things like that.
I mean,
I do
Surveillance
love it when
state.
it shames people crossing the street though. Like that's pretty cool. Like
Paul, what were
We
you
can all
going to
get
say?
behind that, yeah.
What were you going to say, Paul?
Basically, the same thing that Sean said. If you're created like panopticon and look at everybody, which is great in theory, but there's going to be a human behind it, and also it has already been proven that AI has biases built into them. So
that's a good point.
just
Based
because
off
you're
its
wearing
training
something can
Yeah, I mean, I think that
you're allowed to
AI is one of those. Oh, sorry, there might be a lag. I think AI is one of those things where, like, you mentioned it has biases. I think the tech side of what like the AI actually will do is something that billionaires think will be trivial and easy, but then they go tell like 1,000 tech people to do it, and they're like, "Hey, we can't tell the difference between a finger and a hot dog, and we have put $2 billion into this, and we cannot do it." Like, so
We've given it its all.
Maybe someone will call my bluff, but my whole thing is the NSA has been trying to do this for years. Of like, we have a data lake, we can't search it. Can anyone figure out how to search it? I'm assuming there's been thousands of people working on this for years. I I think it's the same thing with AI, and especially when you get into video. I would say, Larry, you know this feature's coming to the Apple iPhones, right? Like this isn't, you don't need some massive, like you could now on the new iPhones, you can search like this person in this video, this moment in this video. So like this is already like on device on Apples. This is, you don't need like some Orwellian level panopticon. Like it's just your iPhone, dude. Like, I don't know. Anyway, I'm
this guy's 80 years old though too. He probably has an Isaac Asimov understanding of what AI can do.
True. That is a good point. And he hasn't really been relevant other than apparently he was briefly the richest person in the world for like 2 minutes and then went back to Bezos. But anyway, still, I guess somehow we always talk about his hot takes and they're always pretty bad. So let's see if he can go 3 for 3 next time.
Pattern fulfilled.
You guys want to talk about cyber insurance?
No, let's talk about recorded future.
Yeah, okay. We'll talk about that before I have to leave.
All right, talk about it. Tell me.
So,
Tell me
okay.
all about it.
Yeah. Okay. So how the heck is recorded future worth $2.65 billion? Because isn't it just like a website you can't even go to because you have to have an account?
Yeah, you're right. It is private and locked.
It's a hype train, man.
It's a hype train. I don't know. That, like, I feel like I'm definitely going to call it my own biases. Like I learned how to do threat intel using their platform. That was like the first thing. And I will admit they had like some pretty good resources and some pretty good stuff behind them.
So it's just a threat intel platform for $2.67 billion?
It's not like a tip like what you would think, but they do all the threat intel stuff, right? They provide you lists. They do the dark web searching. They do like you'll throw names into their platform, and if any news comes up about their names, that'll bubble up.
Google does that for free.
It does it for free, but this one you can like actually put like risk scoring. Like trust me, it's not. It's
You're
not
saying
absolute
it's
shit.
cool.
It is.
Yeah.
Cool.
Would you pay $2.65 billion for it?
No, that's why I was like, why was Master like at first I was like Mastercard is buying them. Then I was like, I guess they're working the threat intel arm.
They just want to incorporate.
They just charged it. That's all.
Listen, they just wanted to incorporate this. I'm assuming the whole thing is
they wanted the points.
This is just them getting in front of the whole fraud detection AI thing.
Yeah,
this is an acquisition to help with that, right? Like,
yeah, they're paying that money to be like the forefront of threat intelligence because threat intelligence is growing, and Mastercard's basically going, okay, we're going to be in front of this, make threat intelligence a big deal, and they're going to invest. And I think while they're spending a lot of money on this, I think it's a good investment in the threat intelligence space because they're going to get their money back from this as it grows as threat intelligence grows over the next decade or so.
Sure. Does anyone know if recorded? Oh, sorry. I was going to say, does anyone know if Recorded Future has done like AI stuff?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah.
So that's
they had some
part of it.
News.
Yeah. So I took over. Wade learned on AI, and I took over like his seat and his work. So I definitely use like Recorded Future and the stuff that he built. Absolutely enjoy using it, and it does have the AI capabilities, so I can see where it is. It would be the product to buy for what Mastercard is wanting to do.
Gotcha.
MasterCard
what are the
like,
AI
hey,
capabilities?
I want to spend. A lot of the AI capabilities are doing that. Some of the analysis against top threats against your organization. I believe also. Some correlation, and I think where Mastercard is entering the space is on that fraud detection to say, okay, here's some compromised cards, compromised accounts, and then it would be able to notify and do that analysis for you. So yes, and lots of people in chat are also reinforcing that Recorded Future does lots of AI stuff.
So it's basically Mastercard decided our fraud detection division is going to be scrapped. We're going to spend $2.5 billion to turn it into its whole thing. And they could probably sell those services to vendors and other things as well.
Yeah. Basically in the threat intelligence front is something that MasterCard recognized as being in the forefront is that it needs to be less reactive and more proactive, saying, hey, we need to do the threat intelligence in order to get out there, get out in front of it and say, here are these things that are emerging, potential fraud, potential causes. The risk scoring that's based on traffic. So it does that heads up. And a lot of organizations, especially financial institutions, are wanting to see that. They don't want to, close the barn door after all of these accounts get compromised and reissue a bunch of cards. They would rather know ahead of time and say, hey, we got in front of this, we stopped this, and MasterCard is recognizing that, and we'll be providing that as kind of a service or kind of a pilot program for financial organizations.
Sure. I mean, a lot of people are saying in chat that it's a pretty solid tool. It seems like it has pretty good penetration, at least amongst our audience, of like people knowing how to use it, people being familiar with it.
It absolutely shuts down some red teams if you get like good CTI for their red teams building their infrastructure and doing some of that initial recon. Recorded Future will see it, and you shut it down. You burn their infrastructure, and you go, okay, we didn't hear from our pen testers for a couple of days because they had to rebuild. They had to rebuild their domain. Like we see it and go, hey, they cloned our domain. They tried sending some phishing emails from it. Take all that as like early intel, early information, and say we're gonna burn down this cloned website before anything emerges from it. And then you see that pen test report a month or so later saying, you guys saw us like within a day of registering this domain, burnt it down, and we had to spend a whole other day like putting it back up again.
So what you're saying is Mastercard, their subscription was so expensive to Recorded Future, they just decided to buy the whole company. Is that what? Is that what I'm hearing?
And there are a lot of good modules. It's a fire hose of information.
Sure.
You can certainly buy everything and spend a lot. You can tune it and be choosy and get some real good advantages from it as well. But I think again, it's Mastercard investing in the threat intelligence space, not just the Recorded Future space.
I mean, it's also potentially an entry into the security space for Mastercard, which is like kind of an interesting, big financial companies have so close ties to security, but traditionally have kind of avoided it as an industry. And I think this might kind of break that mold a little bit of being like, we are going to start providing security services. We are going to start like, integrating security into our products from the ground up or whatever. Maybe that's the read here. I mean, we'll see. It could also just totally be a buy, like pump and dump type of scenario. I mean, it's a lot of money though. So who knows? Okay. I guess we could talk about cyber insurance. But this article, again, this is like a Larry Ellison hot take. I can't really take it that seriously.
Yeah. I mean, like
HelpNet Security, who definitely isn't a cyber insurance provider, probably, says that cyber insurance is poised for exponential growth.
Yeah, that's like the whole thing. It's just there's growth. I don't know. Okay, so like the article it's got more words than it's growing, but I mean, the premiums are going up, right? As well. And, we obviously know the reasons why, and insurance companies are just in the business of making money. So they're not going to just keep playing out these insurance policies. I think it's a good thing though, because it actually flips the pressure. Instead of spending money on insurance, you should be spending money on actually securing these things, right? As opposed to being, well, insurance will pay for it, right?
Yeah.
So I think
this is definitely a story you hear in a lot of places.
The article is like reporting based on an article by CyberCube, or like a research report that was published by CyberCube. I don't know what CyberCube is. I'm now on LinkedIn, and it says they're delivering data-driven cyber risk analytics for the insurance industry, and they have 50 to 200 employees. So I don't know.
They claim to help quantify risk. So taking it from a subjective view to something, we're putting the actual dollar values against it. So my presumption is from a marketplace standpoint, they're probably working with insurers to get them dollar values so they can price out policies and things like that.
I see. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting take that like cyber insurance is going to grow, because I also could hear a take that's like cyber insurance is going to die because just like everyone gets breached. Like it's like uninsurable because everyone gets breached. That
does blow my mind that like you can even still get cyber insurance. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the article is kind of a non-starter, but I mean, it's definitely. I guess we don't have any cyber insurance experts here. I don't know if you want to be a cyber insurance expert or if that like technically makes you go crazy, but apparently it says here the mid-range projection suggests that U.S. standalone cyber insurance market could reach 45 billion in premiums by 2034, which is 5x of today. So today would only be 10 billion in premiums. It seems like a lot less than I would have guessed for cyber insurance. Apparently people aren't paying a whole lot for cyber insurance right now.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind is unless you have a specific regulatory need to carry a cyber insurance policy, a lot of businesses actually will get relevant insurance through various loss policies on general business.
Right.
And so you can get equivalent coverage through other means that many companies are already carrying, and they just put a small rider on that, which is often cheaper for them than getting a full cyber policy. You see cyber more commonly these days where there's an actual need due to some regulation or something for you to literally have cyber insurance.
What regs are there to require cyber insurance? If you know off the top of your head, if not, I'm sorry for putting you on the spot.
No, take this with a slight grain of salt. I used to work in the finance sector, and there were places there where there were actually things that come through from the, I believe, some interpretations, some of the SEC side of things that actually effectively mandate you to have cyber.
Gotcha. So financial mainly.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And there may be others, but that's the one that I'm most familiar with.
Sure. I mean, it makes sense. It's a really heavily regulated
required
industry.
to sing healthcare also in the chat.
That would make sense. I mean, but seriously, if the premiums are $45 billion, like what is the monetary impact of like a Change Healthcare breach? If standalone cyber insurance policies collected $10 billion in premiums, what's the impact of something like the Change Healthcare breach? Because that's got to be close. I mean, I don't. Maybe 10 billion is a lot, but that's got to be billions of dollars, right? Theoretically, if they actually had to pay out, or is it only covering like how much does cyber insurance cover? Does it cover? I'm assuming it covers incident response and like the actual material loss of a ransom payment. Is there anything else? Like it can't cover like all the downstream effects, or else it would be like a $10 billion policy, right?
So, yeah, and it probably depends on the policy. They probably write different stuff into the different policies. So you get a cheaper policy, not cover the ransom. I'm not sure.
It also,
what you just said is true.
Talking about, Sony, that big hack, they lost a lot of money through the movies and such.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We don't know anything about cyber insurance. We should move on. If you actually know something about cyber insurance, come on the show, talk about cyber insurance. I think it's kind of, I mean, okay, here's I just Googled it. The United Healthcare Group estimates their cyber attack cost is $2.3 billion. So if you have a cyber insurance policy, I mean, that would be 25% of the gross revenue of cyber insurance, the industry, for 1 year. Mm-hmm. So basically, if you're Change Healthcare or United Health Group or whatever, and you're about to call in your policy, you're gonna tank that company. There's no way there's no way that policy is ever going to pay out because you need $2.5 billion and the entire gross revenue is only $10 billion. So yeah, I don't know. The numbers don't make sense, but I don't really understand insurance. Again, if you understand this, come on the podcast.
It's crazy too. Cyber insurance is a lot cheaper than I thought it would be, because I'm looking at an article now that says for like $1 million in coverage, this was back in 2019, but it was $1,500 per year. So that's kind of wild to me.
So
$1,500, you're like, all right, I paid my $1,500. Now I need $2.5 billion, please.
Yeah.
So let's talk about cyber insurance, but also move to the next article, which is 23andMe is going to pay $30 million to settle their 2023 data breach lawsuit, right? So this is kind of like the fallout of the data breach, right?
Who is that going to?
So that's a great question. They agreed to pay $30 million to the affected customers.
Oh, it's a class action. Okay.
Yes, it's a class action, which means everyone gets like $3.32 or something like that. Yeah, give me that check.
Can I get something that changes my DNA to someone else's?
No. That's not the feature they offered.
Okay.
You can buy a broken microwave. That'll do that.
The most interesting part about this is at the end of the article, it says revealed that it earned a total revenue of $220 million, down 27% from its $300 million the year before. And a huge chunk of the settlement money will come from cyber insurance, though, which the company expects to recover $25 million out of the $30 million.
So they paid $1,500 and they got $25 million out of it. That's pretty good insurance policy, if you ask me.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we don't know how much they paid for the premium, but clearly less than $25 million, I would assume.
Yeah. So I mean, that kind of brings the kind of full circle here, right? Like cyber insurance is going up, and
right.
Why? Like, where is this money going? And then a breach happens, and then there's
legal. It's the legal stuff, covering the legal fees. Once the insurance has to cover the legal fees, it's better. It's the payouts are going to be huge.
Yeah,
because lawyers are expensive. Yeah.
If your data was breached in 23andMe, I have no idea how much money you're going to get, but $30 million in a class action lawsuit.
No, lawyers take 90%, and then everyone gets $3.
I mean, so it's $6.9 million.
Yeah,
plus the lawyer fees. I mean, you'd be lucky if you get $1, dude. There's 6.9 million users. Sorry.
No, I mean
$5, man, and then the lawyers will take 70% of that, so maybe you get $1.50.
But you will be sent a link where you can delete all your information from the service, and you'll be able to enroll a 3-year privacy and medical shield and genetic monitoring. So if your DNA changes,
monitoring, what does that mean?
If your DNA changes, they will tell you.
Well, but the thing is, I can't to do that, first you have to submit your DNA to a new third party.
Yeah, for the breach monitoring, we're using Kroll's extremely not a government spy program monitoring. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but like another line that stands out to me, with the agreed to pay $30 million, as well as to conduct computer scans. And what frequency are they doing those computer scans? They say they will conduct annual computer scans and cybersecurity audits for 3 years.
They're just getting a pen test. Now they have to get one pen test?
Yeah, annual computer scans and audits for 3 years. And it's like, well, that's congratulations. You met the floor.
Okay, but I will say, I do like it when the legal system backs up how we all feel, which is that you should get an annual pen test. You should monitor for credential stuffing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it does kind of back up. It's like the baseline. It's like, if someone says, oh, I don't need an annual pen test, I'll be like, but you might legally be required to get one if you get breached, right? Like, there is actually, it does kind of come full circle of like, I mean, the annual scan of computer systems is so ridiculous. Like, we have purchased Nessus Professional for $3,800, and now we are compliant with the legal demand.
And once a year.
Yeah, I don't know. Funny. I mean, I do want to know what genetic monitoring is.
That's honestly my most burning question too. When you told me that, I'm like, my DNA is going to change, or like
what they do is they scan the dark web for your genetics.
Is there a dark web for exchanging DNA?
If somebody tries to clone you, they'll let you know.
You can print someone on a 3D printer. Have you not? This is the future.
I have it. You can grow humans?
Yes. No, I honestly don't know what that would be.
I mean,
like,
would it not be like whenever your
not quite at Westworld
gets updated by somebody submitting their DNA or something like that?
Maybe it could be that, but I just like the idea that it's some ridiculously futuristic thing that's impossible to do.
Yeah. Just insurances buy your DNA to
200 years from now, they're like, oh, we detected that you've been cloned with that data.
You get an email. A clone has been grown in vat number 2782. Would you like to terminate?
That's how your future clone self finds out that your future self is a clone.
This is a book. This is a book.
All right, gang. I think that's our cue to move on.
Morty. This is just Rick and Morty. How do we know if we're the clones, guys?
We don't.
Yeah. All right. What else? Political government.
Google getting the gavel thrown at them by the EU.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. I mean, everyone gets the gavel thrown at them by the EU. This is every tech company.
More like the EU.
It's either going to be tax evasion in Ireland or GDPR violations. Which one is it, Sean?
Option number 2.
Hey!
Bingo.
Now that's something we need
Where
like
is
a
this
meme
one?
for. The GDPR violations meme.
Yes, it really is. There's 2 doors. Door 1 is tax evasion via Ireland. It's the second article, Ryan.
Second article. I'm way at the opposite end.
And the second door is GDPR violations that you're probably just going to pay and keep operating because they're not expensive to have material impact to your business. Although, I don't know, Sean, take us away. What's going on here? What did they do?
This one sounds exciting from the headline when it says things like, it's AI data compliance, but it's not actually, because you might be thinking, oh, didn't the EU just pass something with AI? Yes, they did, but this ain't that. This is just GDPR. And what this is basically the allegation is that Google might be in violation of GDPR for sampling personal data as part of setting up its models and algorithms and training them. And so there's a very similar thing with X not that long ago. And X did the thing that every company does when there's even the remotest threat that you are going to be hit with anything from GDPR is they just got the hell out of Europe, at least for now, and said we're reassessing whether
leave the country.
You're saying if I go to sign up
for the
an
specific
excrement?
use case, they stopped using European data around that could contain people information as part of their training set. And
all
so
of the AI models
are
just not going to know what like English people look like.
They're like, what is a what is a flat? What is a flat? You have a flat tire? Why do you live inside of a flat tire?
Well, it is for things like that, right? It's localization is why they care about it from an algorithmic standpoint. And so that's the thing that they have to work around. X is currently dealing with that while they figure out what the heck they want to go do. And Google will probably do something similar, but they'll have to address this at some point because otherwise they are going to run into the model being very America-centric. And that's already enough of a cesspool. We don't need to go any further down that.
I mean, I will say, I think if you surveyed the EU and said, do you support your data being used to train AI? They'd say no. But then if they asked it questions that were horribly regionally inaccurate, they'd be like, this stupid AI, I hate it. So like, it's kind of like you can't have both. You can't have a product, an AI product that works well that doesn't have personal data in it. And I will say, like, I'm sure there are efforts to scrape that kind of personal information from AI models because arguably it isn't required. You don't need to know like, someone's name. Although I guess arguably with like public figures, how does that work? Like, where does the Queen live? Oh, that's GDPR protected. You can't know that.
The issue is just it's the all or nothing nature, right? They have the giant vacuum that they just hoover up everything with.
Yes.
Where you run into the consuming data you don't actually need.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see how it goes. I guess they'll probably just build your audio is good, your video is not, but the whole like giant data vacuum, like you said, is got to be such a hard technical problem to make that thing GDPR compliant. Because just because people expose that information publicly doesn't mean you're allowed to store it, right? If I have on my personal website, here's my name and address, like I can have that and still be GDPR compliant, but you can't have it, right? So it's kind of a weird, I don't know.
Yeah, it's when you as a corporation are processing or consuming personal data. That's when you become subject to the GDPR restrictions. And that's where you start getting into things like people have to have a right to opt out. People have to have an ability to request their information and things like that. And obviously none of the AI models and their teams are set up to do any of that stuff. And that's where they're running into trouble right now.
Yeah.
Right. They don't have any way of saying, take me out of your training model. Yeah.
Correct.
Not able to.
I mean, I think it's interesting.
It's a tough problem to solve.
What was their response? Do you know where did Google have a response? Did they say like, we're
getting out of the country?
We don't. What do they say? We don't negotiate with EUs.
We don't negotiate with EUs.
From what I saw in this article, Google hasn't had a formal response yet, which is why I'm hypothesizing they'll probably do what X did and temporarily suspend use of EU-based data while they figure out what a response is. I think X was originally hit with this months back, and they still haven't actually turned the faucet back on for European data consumption. So,
gotcha. Interesting. And yeah, I mean, people in chat are bringing up some points like, of course, the tech giants just completely walked, all over the regulations, didn't really care or try to follow them, right? It's all about, churn and burn the data, right? So, yeah, I mean, but it's interesting. I think Europe is, we've joked about it. It's very notorious for going after companies like Google and Facebook with big fines for not paying attention.
You guys want to finish up with the WHOIS server?
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah,
there's the rogue WHOIS server giving researchers superpowers no one should ever have.
So what? Flight, invisibility? What kind of superpowers?
I think it's pretty much
being able to see anyone's browser history. That would be a superpower no one should ever have.
Uh-huh. No,
I was saying issuing certificates and stuff like that.
Yeah. So they took over. How did it work? They took over an account by registering a domain. The administrative
They took over
server.
an old domain that was then trusted by downstream everybody, basically.
Right.
For mobile domains.
.mobi.
.mobi.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a domain that was used for mobile device whoising, basically, from what I was able to understand from here.
Oh.
The previous
.mobiregistry.net.
and
that was the official authoritative WHOIS server for .mobi TLD.
So then server received queries from more than 76,000 unique IPs within a few hours. That's got to be a rush. You just go ahead and pull that email out and be like, uh-oh, guys, it's a live one. Over 5 days, I received 2.5 million queries. Why were there so many systems querying a deprecated domain? Which, for those wondering, it was this domain that shouldn't exist anymore. Or this TLD shouldn't exist anymore. Or I guess the .mobi registry shouldn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm. Google.mobi. Oh my gosh.
So then how were the downstream certificates signed? Populated the WHOIS data with junk data that responded to all real Mobi addresses, administrative emails. So
well,
yeah,
I think the idea is if you basically are the intercepted WHOIS, when somebody reaches out to say who is the owner of this domain, right? You can supply any email address you want as the owner of the domain, and then oops, now when you go to register a certificate, that's the email that is the domain owner.
So okay, apparently the impact is he could dictate the email address certificate authority global assign use to determine if party was applying for a TLS certificate was the rightful owner. So someone global sign has a workflow where they confirm if you own the domain because they query the WHOIS information and then send the email to that domain. So you could potentially take over or request, get a certificate for a domain that you shouldn't be able to. So he got a certificate for Microsoft.mobi and confirmed he got the email, and then,
I just think it's funny they shut down this .mobi top level domain, but they just allowed him to fly.
So the domain still exists. It's just that one domain. Yeah, I mean, basically they didn't fully, when they moved over from that .mobiregistry.net, they forgot to actually take it out of the records.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And I will say that I don't think anyone does use the .mobi for like production that I know of. I think it's most like Google and Microsoft have it, but only as like a placeholder redirector, like a park domain. So I don't think anyone's like, just go to hacking.mobi. Like I don't think anyone's ever told me to go to a .mobi address in my entire life.
Yeah, it is funny though, because it just shows how much trust we put in the DNS system, right? And
WHOIS? It's not even DNS.
What's up?
It's WHOIS. It's not DNS. It's a completely different system. It's a whole separate disaster of a list of protocols.
Yeah, but isn't this controlled by ICANN?
No. Each registry is their own registry.
Well, how did he... Wait. I thought you said that .mobi got shut down. Is that what you were
No. I misspoke. Just the one domain that was the authoritative record.
Okay. So
there was the domain that Mobi had for their WHOIS server, basically. Yes. They migrated that at some point in the past. They didn't actually kill the old domain. It just lapsed. Okay. So then he came in and said, oh, hey, there's this domain.
And it was still already in the registry, though.
Yes.
Yes. It was literally like a DEF CON conversation back from the hotel at DEF CON, and then they actually did it. That was literally the article.
Yeah.
Like that.
He even talks about him going back to his room at DEF CON after he bought it.
That's
he had to do something while they were searching his room, right? So.
Right.
So the key moment was they moved from now it's NIC, the NIC, whatever that is, Nick.
Yeah.
Basically, it was whois.mobileregistry.net, and it was supposed to be moved to whois.nic.mobi. So when that happened, everyone was supposed to move over. Like Global Sign should have moved, and it should have been querying the new TLD. But a lot of providers were not doing it properly. And so that's where they registered the domain. They noticed it was expired, registered it, monitored it for incoming queries, saw there were still queries, figured out which providers were doing queries to that domain, and then figured out they could get certs from Global Sign because they weren't using the new TLD. They're using the old TLD. Got it. Yeah. Basically, I mean, you said DNS, but if you had said WHOIS, it would apply, which is basically, does anyone really know how this works? Does anyone really know how WHOIS works? Or is it just layers on layers of like, WHOIS apparently is vulnerable to takeover because of everyone didn't update their WHOIS provider, or like the API was out of date or whatever. So it's like, the classic oopsie legacy. We don't know how WHOIS actually works. The guy that knew how it worked got fired 5 years ago.
Yeah, that was the interesting question to me was, go ahead.
I think I'm lagging, but they took over a domain that was, antiquated. Nobody's supposed to be using it. They all hardwired into some mobile devices or hard-coded in there that was actually still reaching out to them. So what are they going to change? Stuff that's already antiquated? It's another thing of not a real exploit to other people, because it's only vulnerable to things that are already, going to thrown out.
Yeah, I think that kind of touches on what I was going to go to, which is the interesting question in my mind, especially since I haven't the faintest idea how WHOIS works in any detail. Is just what would a clean migration have looked like here? Would it have been enough for them to do something to fully expunge that, domain? Or is there actually something that downstream consumers of that would have had to do? I suspect the latter, in which case it's almost like, how could this ever have gone well is sort of the question in my mind.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's the downstream consumers where like Global Sign wasn't querying the updated information. They just had it hard coded to the old address.
Right.
So, I mean, I think it's one of those where like, arguably, like it's up to the people who migrated it to maintain the domain until it's no longer receiving queries, right? Like that's the smart move. You gotta you can't just let that stuff expire. If the domain, if the domain's still being queried, don't let it expire. That was the whoopsie. Because yes, people should migrate, but all you have to do is monitor the people who are querying and regularly contact them and say, hey, we noticed you were still querying it, or just keep it and send it to nil. Be invalid response. Your code now broke and you have to go fix it. Right. So it's up to the people who own the domain originally. They should not have let it lapse. That's the one thing. And yes, exactly. People are saying in chat, you got to own that domain in perpetuity. Yeah.
This is one guy's responsibility to keep it updated, and he failed.
One guy's credit card. What happened was the intern who originally founded the company, his credit card expired, and then the domain stopped renewing, and they couldn't get it back because the email pointed to his old email. But again, it could be
number anymore.
But there are extenuating circumstances. You can do hostile takeovers of domains. If I go register MicrosoftSucks.net, they can come after me and take over that domain, right? So it's not like you can't get the domain back in any circumstance. It's, that it was on them to keep that legacy domain, and they didn't do that. And so it's on them. But yeah, I mean, you have to assume downstream consumers of your data are going to not update their code. That's just like running an API 101. So yeah, we could probably close. I think that's a good time to close it. So
we're light on news this week.
Yeah, well, thanks everyone
for
coming.
News, yet we went for a full hour.
Yeah, no, I know.
We always do.
We always do. We always got the gift of the gab.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Thanks everybody.
See you all next week.
Cool.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Kill it with fire.